Hello, Class 5-1 Orange Group. Here's Mr. Waterman with today's Language Arts lesson on Tuesday, August 31st, 2021. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Okay, so in our grammar workbooks today, we are going to review pages 67 and 68, which you were supposed to complete in last Friday's class. After I have gone over the answers, I am going to go into the directions for today's test over action verbs, which will be on pages 69 and 70 today. Okay, so last week we started working with action verbs and we learned a couple of things. In Friday's class, we learned that a verb must agree with its subject. A singular subject takes a singular verb. A plural subject takes a plural verb. We also learned to add s to most verbs in the present tense if the subject is singular. Finally, we learned if the subject is plural, the verb must be plural. Do not add s to the verb if the subject is a plural noun. Okay, so for the directions for this activity, it said to think about the story Sleds on Boston Common, which is the story used in this grammar unit. Then use a verb from the box to complete each sentence in a way that makes sense. On the line following each sentence, you needed to write whether the subject of the sentence was singular or plural. So we did number 1 together. Now let's look at the answers for 2 through 5. Number 2. General Gage listens to Henry. General Gage is one person, so the subject is singular. Number 3. The British soldiers camp on Boston Common. Let's cross these out here. British soldiers are plural. Number 4. Henry's sister brings cornbread and apple jam to the school. Henry's sister is a singular subject. Finally, for number 5, the children practice handwriting at school. The children is a plural subject. And there you have it. Here are your answers for page 67. Now, let's look at the answers on page 68. This was our proofreading activity. Just a few reminders. We wanted to be sure that the verb agrees with the subject. We also wanted to be sure that each sentence begins with a capital letter and ends with the correct punctuation mark. That's a period, a question mark, an exclamation mark, right? Finally, we wanted to be sure to use commas to separate 3 or more words or phrases in a series. For the directions for our proofreading activity, it said, in the passage below, circle verbs that don't agree with their subjects. Also, circle mistakes in spelling, capitalization, or punctuation. Then rewrite the passage adding commas where needed. So we had a couple of mistakes that we looked at in the first few sentences on Friday. I left off here, empty C. So now let's continue. The only movement in the harbor. Harbor is not spelled correctly. It should be Harbor. Is at the far end. Where British soldiers are getting a ship ready to sail. That takes care of the first paragraph. Now, let's look at the second paragraph. I'm going to indent. Joshua, the youngest is not spelled correctly, should be Youngest. The youngest man in the group that should be reaches. Reaches. Reaches into his pockets. Okay? And he says, I have no money. He announces to Henry, and Nathan is not correct. It should be a capital N because Nathan is the boy's name. Okay, so now we have fixed the second paragraph. Let's look at the final paragraph. I'm going to, one more sentence. Nathan looks at Joshua and says, there needs to be a comma here because we're going into a quote. None of us that's wrong, that should be have. None of us have money. Okay, and this should be a period, not a comma. Okay, final paragraph. I'll indent. Henry, run is not correct. It should be runs. Runs his fingers through his gray hair and says, that needs to be a capital W for we need to get back to work. He pauses and looks out at the sea. We don't need a question mark, we need a period. And then, finally, we need our harbor back. And there you have it. We have corrected the paragraph. Please be sure to check your answers and make sure you have circled all of the mistakes. Now, we are on page 69 and 70. This is going to be our test on action verbs. Please listen to the directions very carefully, and please listen as I read through each sentence. On page 69, we have two parts. There's part A and part B. Part A. It says to write the action verb on the line that follows each sentence. There are 6 of these. Please listen. Number 1. The students walk home for lunch. 2. Henry wears mittens and boots. 3. The soldiers dress in red coats. 4. General Gage's children live in England. 5. The children play together. 6. Some soldiers work at a fort. Part B. For numbers 7 through 12, change the verbs so that they agree with the subjects. Keep the sentences in the present tense. 7. Americans pay taxes to King George. 8. Henry color the maps. 9. Mr. Andrews teach the lessons. 10. British ships sails out to sea. 11. Henry study hard at school. 12. Henry's friends worries about the harbor. Okay, so in numbers 7 through 12, each of the verbs are incorrect. You need to change them to make sure that they agree with their subjects. Okay? Please write the correct verb here. And keep the sentences in the present tense. After you've checked your answers carefully, turn to page 70. This is the last part of the action verbs test. Now you have to do a little bit of writing here. Please remember that an action verb is a word that tells what happens or happened. A verb must agree with its subject. A singular subject takes a singular verb. A plural subject takes a plural verb. Please remember to add S to most verbs in the present tense if the subject is singular. And remember, if the subject is plural, the verb must be plural. Do not add S to the verb if the subject is a plural noun. Now, for the directions for this activity, it says to pretend, that means imagine, pretend that you live in Boston in the winter of 1774. You need to write a passage about your experiences. Keep your passage in the present tense. Use action verbs in each sentence. Okay? Now, when you're writing your passage, I want you to try and fill the lines. This page is going to be 10 points. You need to make sure that your verbs agree with your subject. You need to make sure that you have correct punctuation. Don't forget capital letters to start sentences. Okay? Check your passage very carefully when you're finished. You can look back at the prior pages to give you some ideas on how to write your passage. Page 69 is going to be 12 points. So you get 1 point for each one. There are 22 points total. We will go over the answers in Wednesday's class. And that's it. Please remember, if you have any questions, to send me an email or please send me a message on Class Dojo. Please do your very, very best. I know you all will. Before you take this test, go back and review the 4 pages we have completed on action verbs. All of you should have no problem with this test and the activities. Take care, stay safe, be well. I hope you have a great day studying, and I really, 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 really hope that we can all come to school and study together very, very soon. Bye-bye for now.